Welcome. So I'm Jonelle Siren, and I serve on the board of directors for AIGA Chicago as VP of Education. Thank you for joining us for Writing and Designing a Resume with Kelli Evans. This webinar is part of the Toolkit series at AIGA Chicago. It will be recorded. So we have roughly 100 people in the room right now. I'm going to be behind the scenes watching the Q&A and kind of pulling any questions for Kelli. There's going to be two opportunities for answers. One will be after discussing the content and writing a resume, and the other will be after Kelli talks about the design of a resume. So Kelli Evans is a designer and educator with extensive experience in working in Chicago, Cincinnati, Los Angeles, and New York. She received a BS in graphic design from the University of Cincinnati, an MFA in graphic design from the University of Illinois at Chicago. And Kelli has been teaching since 2008 and has been an adjunct faculty member at the University of Illinois at Chicago, Lake Forest College, and the School of the Art Institute Chicago, and is currently assistant professor of visual communication at Loyola University in Chicago. Kelli currently serves on the board of directors for AIGA Chicago as education chair. So please join me in welcoming Kelli Evans.
Hello, everyone. Going to talk a little bit about, why I'm here. You may have seen my bio on the page for this event, but may still be asking yourself, well, who made her the expert here? And I'll have to go back a little bit to explain. I was in a 5-year degree program as an undergrad, and I was required to start co-oping as a sophomore. So in 1983, I started writing resumes, creating a portfolio, and going on interviews every quarter for the next 4 years. Yes, I know I'm really dating myself. I moved to Chicago after graduation, and I did the same thing to land jobs here. Later on, I taught multiple sections of the Visual Communication Professional Practice course at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I was also an AIGA Chicago mentor teaching, you guessed it, professional practice. I've been teaching this material every fall to my students at Loyola since 2012. I've been responsible for interviewing and hiring designers at the various firms that I've worked for over the years. While I was at Unilever, I also interviewed and hired design firms from the United States, South America, and Europe. So I've had a lot of experience with this sort of things, and that's why I'm here to talk to you all about resumes. What is a resume? It's a summary of your skills, education, and work experiences for prospective employers. It is your potential employer's first impression of you. It's an information design project, and it's also a visual identity and branding project. So pro tip, resume with 2 accents is the original spelling and still preferred. Your resume must have visual interest, unity, clear communication, impeccable typography, and absolute visual hierarchy. So what is the difference between a CV and a resume? Curriculum vitae, or CV, is Latin for course of life. Resume is French for summary. Resumes are used when applying for jobs in your industry. CVs are used when applying for positions in academia, fellowships, and grants or high-level scientific research positions. If you're applying for both academic as well as industry positions, you will need to create both a resume and a CV. Resumes are typically much shorter documents, 1 to 2 pages, while CVs are variable in length as they contain much more information. Outside of the US, CV is used to describe all job application documents, including a resume. Make sure and ask which kind of document to submit if you're applying for jobs outside of the United States. Both resumes and CVs should represent you as the best qualified candidate and are used to get you an interview. It should be noted that it's beyond the scope of this presentation to discuss all aspects of the various types of resumes, such as video resumes and scannable resumes. So this section is only about content. I always have my students write a few drafts before they start any design. If the content is not clear and well structured, no amount of design is going to help. Write in a word processing program like Word or Pages. Design will come later. Think critically about content and try to cut out anything that is not absolutely necessary. Have at least 2 people read through your resume and give you feedback. What seems obvious and easy to understand to you may not be so for others. Taking the time to do this will ultimately save you time in the long run. So your resume must include contact information, an objective perhaps, education, experience, and skills. When writing a resume, you need to understand the specific needs of each section. We'll delve into each of these in the following slides. These items are listed in the order that they should appear in your information hierarchy. The only exception here is the education section. When you first graduate, this section will be towards the top of your page, usually right after your contact info. Once you start getting design jobs, then this information can be placed lower down the page with the experience section moving up in the hierarchy. Although the resume is a highly structured document, it should reflect what you think will convince your prospective employer to give you on an interview. I'll delve into each of these sections in the following slides. So your contact information must include name, phone number, the URL for your portfolio, and an email address. Make sure to include complete and up-to-date contact information. Use the name that you use every day. If your name is Mary Alexandra Johnson, but everyone knows you as Alex, use that. You may indicate whether your phone number is for a mobile phone, or you may include day and night phone numbers. Just make sure it is easy for people looking at your information to get in contact with you. And it's worth paying for a domain name for your portfolio rather than one that is generated by Squarespace or Wix. For your email address, use a professional address with your name in it. Do not use the address you use with friends and family. Do not use a generic design one. And don't use your school address, especially if you are near graduation, as you may not always have access to that account. It's okay to leave off a physical address, but you may choose to include a city, state, and county. If you are a student and want to include a physical address, you may want to provide your current address as well as permanent address. It's a good idea to include the dates that you will be at each address. You may also choose to include links to social media. An objective is a brief summary of your aspirations, interests, skills, and/or objectives. Current trends indicate that the days of including an objective statement in your resume are gone. This is something that I typically don't encourage my students to include in their resume because I feel that the cover letter is a better place for this type of information. But if you do use one, here are some tips. In this first example, seeking to advance my career in UX design and improve my programming skills. So what's wrong with that example? It's generic and the focus is on what the candidate wants to advance their career rather than what they can bring to a prospective employer. This is the second example. As a UX designer, I seek to create revolutionary products that are easy to use, smart, and beautiful for Tango design. That example is better. It accentuates your skills and potential value to the target company. For your education, list your college and graduate degrees in reverse chronological order with the most recent first. You must include the name of the educational institution and its location, your degree, your major or specialization and any minors, and the date of graduation or expected graduation. Optional things to include: academic honors or you graduated with distinction, honors and awards received elsewhere, dates of attendance. Recent graduates can include their thesis subject and description, especially if it's relevant to their career goals. Any additional courses or training you may have completed could also be included. Things not to include: your GPA, unless it is excellent, your high school, unless it was geared towards your professional objective, and a complete course list. Here's an example from a student still in school who studied abroad for 2 semesters. Note the brief description of accomplishments during their time in Rome. Here's an example of someone with a postgraduate degree and a certification. So it lists the MFA first, then the certification, and then the undergraduate degree. So it's going back in time. List work experience in reverse chronological order. Typical content for an experience section includes company or organization and where it's located, the position title, dates of employment or involvement, and descriptions of responsibilities and duties. You don't have to put all this information in this order. For example, if you wish to emphasize the jobs you held rather than the place of employment, you may want to list position titles first. Students or recent grads can include work experience that is unrelated to the professional field because it demonstrates the ability to get and keep a job. As soon as you start getting design jobs, though, these should be removed from your resume. You should describe design-related work experiences at summer jobs, part-time jobs, internships, freelance, or other co-op jobs, and clearly identify them as such. If you have gaps in your experience, you may be asked about that during an interview. Be honest and answer the question. For instance, you could say, I took a gap year and traveled, or I was a primary caregiver for a sick family member during that time. Remember, though, that it is against US law for prospective employers to ask questions about age, gender, marital status, religion, race, national origin, military service, or mental health. The example above is from one of my former students. You can see here that she has chosen to list her position first before the name of the place she worked. So it's really up to you how you want to structure that. What you should list for your skills: software and technical skills, design and technical competencies, any additional skills you have, such as videography, photography, etc., programming languages, or patents you may hold. You may want to indicate your proficiency with any software. So are you an expert in something? Are you proficient in it? Or you just have a working knowledge of it? It gives the employer a little better understanding of your comfort level with this software. You can list any other skills that relate to design. It doesn't just have to be about what software you know. The items in this section of honors and activities highlight anything relevant that you have participated in and the honors you've received. These can be good talking points during your interview and can help show you how you could be an asset to your potential employer. You can choose to include any or all of these items on your resume, and you may want to lump them into an honors and activities section. Or you could have separate categories like membership and include all of that type of information there, whether it is academic or professional. You should figure out the best way to clearly organize your information and make sure to include the dates for each item. So make sure that you can include an explanation of what the item listed is if it's not readily understandable by the title. Here are some examples that require a little bit of explanation. So there was, for the Donska Scholarship, it's an award given given yearly to a Loyola student, to the most promising student in the major. So you just, you can't get what it means by just looking at the name of that. And the same with the second one. Some examples are completely understandable and you don't have to have any further explanation. Cook County Adult Reading Program Tutor, Dean's List, etc. It's all readily apparent to the reader. If you have work that was accepted into a gallery, exhibition, or competition, make sure to mention if it was by invitation or if it was reviewed by a jury. If you are looking for work internationally, you can list things that will facilitate your working outside of the US. Information you may want to include is, if applicable, are you a EU passport holder? Are you a Commonwealth citizen? Do you have dual citizenship, student work permit visas, and languages spoken? And you can indicate the degree of fluency. But if you're an international student in the US, your visa status should not be included on your resume. Your educational background and work history will display that you're an international student. Hiring managers will ask the appropriate questions during the recruitment process. Pro tip: create a resume in the language of the country where you would like to work. Any information you provide is easy to check, and many big companies do check the accuracy of what is on your resume. They check your degrees claimed, dates of employment, and former employers. Experienced professionals usually have a strong grasp on the capabilities required for a role and are typically good at detecting things that don't seem to add up or are misrepresentations. Once you've been caught, you've ruined your opportunity to get hired and damaged your reputation. Your dates of employment must match any employment records, your interview answers, and your LinkedIn profile. If the dates don't match, you'll be seen either as misrepresenting yourself or that you are not detail-oriented. Neither of those are good things. Lastly, some potential employers will look you up on social media. Only include links to your social media if it relates to your practice. It is okay to have a social media account that is only for your work and another for personal use. Be aware, though, that potential employers may be able to find both. One last word about social media. You can take the content you create for your resume and upload it to LinkedIn. I encourage all of my students to take advantage of this platform for professional reasons. So the question we always get is, how many pages should we have? College students and recent grads usually only need 1 page for the simple reason that they don't have enough content to need more pages. Some potential employers may specifically ask for a 1-page resume. If that is the case, that is what you should submit. However, as long as the content is relevant and persuasive, go ahead and add that extra page of accomplishments. This fixes a big problem caused by the myth of the need for a 1-page resume. Trying to cram a lot of information into 1 page makes for text that is uncomfortably dense and a design that feels cramped and overly busy. Although there is one thing you should consider: if you add another page, the viewer may not go to the second page. So try to keep the most important information on the first page. So before they begin writing, I always have my students print out the jobs skills checklist on the OWL at Purdue website and circle anything that applies to them. It will really help you see all the skills you have, but that you may have not considered. Writing your resume is not like writing an email to a friend. It is a formal document with some specific rules that should be followed. You may use the present tense when writing about a current position, but it is more powerful and equally correct to write your entire document in the past tense. Always include the years you have worked somewhere. And months are optional, but if the position is an internship or a summer job, then you may want to include that information. Another pro tip: always use an en dash for your dates. A resume should be written in a telegraphic way. That means getting rid of things like personal pronouns and some common articles. Sometimes you do need to include these articles for clarity, just not all the ones you would use if you were writing an essay for your art history class. So in normal speak, you would say, I created a new brand identity and launched a global marketing campaign that resulted in a 25% increase in sales of product X over a 6-month period. In resume speak, you would write, created new brand identity and launched global marketing campaign that resulted in 25% increase in sales of product X. Use action verbs when writing your resume, and remember that the thesaurus is your friend. Here are some examples of action verbs related to creative skills: created, introduced, presented, acted, improvised, originated, presented, renovated, spearheaded. You can also find the list of those action verbs on the OWL at Purdue website. Present specific accomplishments and achievements when describing your previous work experience, rather than simply listing your job responsibilities. Describe your work in terms of achievements, not tasks. Focus on actions taken and the results achieved. Use data to back it up whenever possible. So don't just write created email campaigns. Write collaborated with marketing department to create optimized email campaign resulting in 47% increase in new subscribers over 12 months. There are a few ways to let your prospective employer know that let your prospective employer know your preferred gender pronouns. Use your own discretion and do what feels most comfortable for you. Here are a few ways you could indicate them. So you could include them in your email signatures. You could share them at the beginning of your cover letter or list them after your name on your resume.
Thanks, Kelli.
I'm having some technical difficulties, Jonelle. The slides are automatically advancing, and I need a moment to stop the share and fix that while we talk about some questions.
Sure. Do you want to take that moment right now and we can come back in a couple minutes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're going to take just a quick few minute break and then we'll be back in just a bit. Probably want to turn your camera off. Kelly, your camera and your mic. Okay.
I'm trying. I'm having no luck here technically.
Okay, just a couple of things to our participants. So I see that we have both the chat and the Q&A working. Please put all the questions in the Q&A. I'm getting some of them in the chat and I can't move them over. So if there's specific questions, go ahead and put that in the chat. But if there's questions for Kelly that you want me to answer live, please put them in the Q&A. So we're just going to give her a couple of minutes to fix what's going on with PowerPoint and we'll be back. Bear with us. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for your patience. I got that sorted. That was a bit discombobulating having the slides moving around like that, but we're back on track and the second half should hopefully go more smoothly. So let's go ahead and get some questions answered if you don't mind, Janelle.
No, not at all. And first, people are saying in the chat that this is an amazing presentation and thanks so much for all of the content. So everything's great. All right, so we have a few questions here. So from Rachel, should we put volunteer experience in our work history and is it relevant?
I think absolutely. I think volunteer experience is good to include because it shows you care about other people, and you can choose how you want to put it in. For some students who are just graduating or about to graduate, they don't have a lot of experience, so you may want to have like work experience and volunteer experience kind of being in the same section. But if you've got a little bit more experience, then you could you could separate them out. So you could put work experience and then volunteer experience. It just kind of depends on what's the best organizational strategy, depending on how many positions you've held.
Great. Rachel also asks another question. So she's a student, but going into a second career, should she include former work history if it's not relevant to the current career path? And then how far back should she go?
That one's a little tough when you're changing careers, because you don't want to have just like a blank, like expanse, but that could be something that you could cover, say in your cover letter, like, I recently changed careers and, I'm moving forward as a graphic designer. I worked for 15 years in the financial industry. So there's a way to cover off on that. And if they're interested in a further work history, you could always provide that to them.
That's great. This one's anonymous, but if I had a full-time job that was also freelancing at the same time, what would be a good way of listing that experience? So listing freelance experience.
It's full-time freelance?
Sounds like it, yes.
Okay. Again, that's like how you want to structure it. If you have a lot of different freelance things that you've done, that could be its own separate section, or it could just be a job listing under say company X, freelance designer from 2016 to the present, right? So you could just do it that way so that they know it's an ongoing full-time freelance experience.
Thanks. Yeah. And Leah and Rachel, I see you both in there helping me out. Yes, please put all of the questions in the Q&A. That's better for me in terms of being able to get these for Kelly. And so a lot of people are asking if the webinar is going to be available. Yeah, so as I said in the beginning, it's recording right now. It's going to be put on our YouTube channel, I just found out. And it should be up there in a couple of days. Okay.
And unfortunately, bit glitchy at the very beginning. So again,
We'll do an edit there. Leah's asking, is it bad if my email has a number in it? For example, my name followed by a number. Is that professional?
I don't think that really matters. As long as it's not like, fluffy pony 17, I think you're going to be fine, right? Because sometimes it's hard to generate original emails. So I don't really think that that's a problem.
Okay. For older workers in their 40s and 50s, do we have to list our graduation date for our undergrad degree? And, there still is age discrimination. Not everyone wants to hire Gen Xers. Thanks.
I'm a Gen Xer and I list my undergraduate when I graduated because I've earned those stripes is what I think.
Excellent. We have another one here that's asking for more clarification on working full-time, but also doing freelance as a side project. So how could that be listed? And any help on the cover letter for that too?
So it depends. Okay, if your employer has a rule that you're not supposed to be freelancing and you're working full-time, you're going to want to leave that information off because some places are like that. You are not allowed to freelance. So that's something you should find out to make sure it's legit. And I mean, that's different than doing a side project, like you're doing a wedding invitation for a friend of yours, right? That's a different thing altogether. And again, it just comes down to choosing how you want to put that experience together. And it could just be listed as a separate freelance experience, especially if you've got more than one of them. If it's concurrent with your current job, then it could just be listed with the regular experience as well.
And then I have here, if my design was featured in a very prestigious article, would that go under an awards section?
Yeah, definitely. Anything like that shows that you have been acknowledged for your work. It's always good to put that information in there.
Okay, good. And then I've got a few different versions of this question, but people are wondering how far back they should go. So advice for people who have longer work histories. How far back do you go with listing employment? Should you leave off dates from the 80s? What are your thoughts on that?
I think what happens if you are a person with that much experience, I've actually helped a few friends who were in the similar situation who weren't in academia but had a lot of experience, and they do sort of you can have a section where you're kind of paraphrasing past experience without having to list everything. You can say, I've been working in the industry as an administrator or a designer or as a creative director for 20 years, and so that's another way that you can handle it. Or if you've got a lot of experience, you're going to have a multi-page document, right? And so they're going to expect that. I know, friends who's I've done work for, help them with their resumes who have even more experience than me. It was a 4 or 5 page document, and without even being considered a CV, because CVs just get ridiculously long. For if all of you guys who are in academia know how crazy that can get.
Yeah. Another one I have here is from Molly. Molly says, unfortunately, due to financial issues, I was not able to complete my degree in design and have since worked many jobs. When it comes to writing my resume, I come to an immediate halt when facing the school issue. I am now almost 30 and have worked many jobs. I'm just wondering what advice you would have while writing my resume.
That's a little tougher because it'd be tougher if you were right out of school, but since you've worked at a lot of places since then, I think that there's less importance placed on that. Again, that's a spot where you'd move the education section further down. and you would highlight your work experience within the field. And you could say, you could just not list the degree, you could list the dates, the school and the dates attended and what you studied. And I think that would be a way to kind of approach how to say, I didn't finish up, but I've actually got a lot of experience.
Yeah, if I could interject, I would recommend putting in relevant coursework, like highlighting a section there if you didn't complete the degree. And then, your skills are going to be a really important part. So really talking about those technical skills, your software and your capabilities there, as well as like professional and sort of soft skills too.
Right.
But I wondered, like, if you worked many jobs, I wonder, if the jobs are in design, like if you've been doing freelance or that type of work, then that's going to be showing in the portfolio. And honestly, that's very important. So I wouldn't be too concerned, to be totally honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have your resume ends up being the list of facts about your skills and about you, and then your portfolio is like your quality of work, and that's completely applicable for this industry. All right. So is it worth it to mention any skills acquired with websites like Udemy or other platforms rather than a school? So like I'm thinking like Skillshare and things like that, where you're taking courses maybe online.
I mean, I think you can if you're getting some sort of an accreditation for it, right? If you get some sort of a certificate of an accomplishment. I mean, if you're just taking courses because you're increasing your knowledge base, that's a good thing. But then maybe you've learned some new platform, and under your skills, you put like, let's say you take a Skillshare class on programming, like Python, right? And so you don't have to list that you took a course on learning Python. You will just list Python as one of your skill sets for a kind of, as a programming language. So I think that's how you get around it.
Okay. I'll do one more. There's a ton of questions.
See, there's a lot.
About 30 or so. So I have one here. So what is the minimum, this is from Ma, what is the minimum size of the font that we can use in a resume? Because sometimes it may not fit with all the detail and descriptions.
So I'm going to be going into that in the next session on design. And that's really why I argue for having it go to 2 pages, right? Even if you're a beginner, it's better for things to be legible than sticking to that 1-page rule. Unless, of course, someone says they only want 1 page, then you're going to have to just edit it like crazy to get it to work, and might have to fiddle with things like margins and point size of your type, etc. And there's no easy answer for that, because the size of the type you use is dependent on a lot of things that are related to the typeface, whether it's condensed, whether it's got a high X height or a low X height. Those all determine how big you should make the type.
Great. I'm going to let you carry on and do the design portion. And again, please use the Q&A for the questions rather than the chat. All right, and we'll go back to the presentation.
Okay, so now we're going to have some kind of work on the fun part, which is designing a resume. There are some things that we need to think about as we begin this phase before we even begin sketching. We're going to go through the design process first and then look at some examples. You can use any software you want to make your resume, but InDesign really is the best software to use. It has an amazing amount of typographic control and is meant for this sort of document. Logo or no logo, it's perfectly fine to create a type treatment that is just your name and/or contact info. This can become a sort of word mark that is used throughout your promotional materials. If you do have a logo, consider how it will look at various sizes and how it will look online. Remember that your logo or word mark should be able to work all in one color. Think about creating a letterhead for yourself that can be used across several professional documents, like cover letters, invoices, and estimates. Use what you create for the resume as a starting point, and remember that the documents can look like siblings, but don't have to look like identical twins. Some people love using bullet points, but I'm not one of them. I use them grudgingly, as in this presentation, because they can be helpful when organizing information. The biggest mistake people make when using these is just hitting the bullet point button in their software. The bullet points are usually too big and/or the spacing between the bullet point and the text is awkward. Customize these things and you can get a much more attractive result. You can also consider using other glyphs to replace that plain old dot. It's not unusual these days to see resumes that include a photo or an illustration or an avatar of the person represented. I always caution my students when considering including this because it can immediately subject you to bias. These biases may include racism, sexism, ageism, and many other isms. You may be judged for wearing items that reflect your religious beliefs or because the person viewing your photo does not like red hair. These biases on the part of the viewer may be overt or they may be unconscious. It's your choice to include these things, but you should accept the fact that even though it is wrong, you may be judged by how you look. Design in black and white and then add one or maybe two colors. If you use color, consider whether you have easy access to a good color printer or that you may have to go to a service bureau to get it printed. If you want elements to bleed off the page, then you must have it professionally printed or printed on a larger sheet and then trimmed to size. This is because there's always at least a 1/4 inch or so area near the edge of any page where the printer can't print ink. So some tips for good design. White space is your friend. Let your design breathe and use custom margins. Don't let software defaults make design decisions for you. Do not distort or stretch images or type. If you need a condensed typeface, choose one. Don't squish it in the software. Body text should be set between 9 and 11 points, or even smaller depending on X height. Body text set at 12 point is almost always too big, and it's also the default in most software. It's not going to look good if it's set at 12 point, unless it's maybe Mrs. Eves. That probably would look okay. Create a visual hierarchy so that the viewer immediately knows where to look first, second, and so on. Avoid fully justified type, like in newspapers, unless you want to spend a lot of time massaging it to get rid of rivers and odd spacing between words and letters. Simple and clean design is good. Don't add unnecessary elements just because you want to be fancy or fill up some space. See the first item on this list. Make your design decisions intentional. If something's there, it has to be there for a reason, and people should be able to understand what its purpose is. So begin by making a quick sketch or two using paper and your favorite drawing tool. Going right into the computer leaves you restricted by the program and the interface you are using. Sketches are quick and your design will evolve as you move into the digital sphere. First of all, you should decide if you are a serif, more traditional, or a sans serif, more modern, or maybe both. Whatever you choose, go for a clean and simple typeface. Choose a typeface that has a variety of weights and other options. Does it have non-lining numerals, small caps, condensed as well as extended fonts? These are all good things because they give you more to play with. Or you could consider using a superfamily like Thesis, designed by Dutch designer Luc de Groot. A superfamily is a set of typefaces, sans serif and serif designs, for example, or regular slabbed rounded variations that are designed to all work together. Avoid free fonts because, like a lot of things, you get what you pay for. Usually the kerning is bad or non-existent. If you have a subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud, you can use the typefaces available in Adobe Fonts. Or if you can, purchase the Fontfolio Education Essentials. It offers 500 fonts assembled in collaboration with the AIGA. The cost of the folio is $150, but these fonts are yours for life. It's a good starting point for your type collection, and there's a big cost savings because they would cost much more if they were each purchased individually. Here's a short list of recommended typefaces that I give to my beginning typography classes. Why a list like this? So that papyrus and the like can go the way of the pharaohs. Also, be wary of using script typefaces unless you're designing wedding invitations. Pro tip, do not use system fonts. If you're applying for a design job, you'll be judged on your typography and the font you choose to use. Don't use Minion just because it's the default font for InDesign. Dig a little deeper. You can also mix and match different typefaces. The important thing to remember when you're mixing typefaces is to go for visual contrast. These first two, you can see there's a very visible difference between the typefaces being used. And then the last one, you can see there's not enough contrast. So you can limit yourself to 2 or maybe 3 typefaces max. So you've got your content written, you're looking at typography. So the next thing that you should do is take a representative sample of text from your resume and create some variations, changing the font, weight, size, column width, leading, etc. Print out your text when you're done. This is really important. Type on the screen usually looks much smaller than what it looks like when it's printed out. Choose the variation that you think works best and then make your paragraph style sheets. Use style sheets, seriously. Taking the time to set them up initially will save you so much time down the line if you change your mind about any aspect of your design. Clients always change their mind, so get in the habit of always setting up paragraph styles. Create a few layouts based on your sketches. Make at least 3 completely different conceptual directions and print them out. Make sure your hierarchy is clear. The reader must be able to quickly scan the page and absorb the most important information. Share them with others and get feedback on how well they are working. Give it to someone and have them do the 20-second test. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. Based upon the feedback you get, choose a direction to refine. Readers typically read top left to bottom right when information is visually balanced on the page. Divide your resume into 4 quadrants, as seen in this example. When your page is visually balanced, the reader will typically read anything in quadrant 1 first. This means that you should usually put your most important information, what you want the potential employer to see first, in this quadrant. How do you know when you've successfully created an easily read resume that allows prospective employers to process information quickly? Try having someone perform the 20-second test on your resume. So give it to someone else, time them for 20 seconds as they read it, take it away from them, and ask them what they learned about you. If what they tell you is what you want potential employers to know, then good for you, well done. If not, then it's back to the drawing board and repeat is needed. Try to give it to a different person each time. This helps make sure that your visual hierarchy is clear and is leading the reader through the document in a way that is most effective for delivering your content. Now is the time to experiment a little bit with color. Remember, 1 or 2 colors in addition to black is a good way to keep your resume from looking like a bag of Skittles. Repeat the process of refinement until you feel it is the best it can be, or you hit a deadline, whichever comes first. Keep printing your resume out as you work. Keep refining it until you have a document that passes the 20-second test with flying colors. And now for some last-minute housekeeping. Most employers will not consider a resume with a typo in it. That means you won't get the interview and therefore you won't get the job. So according to a 2013 Career Builder survey, 58% of employers identified resumes with typos as one of the top mistakes that lead them to automatically dismiss a candidate. I suspect that number is much higher in the design industry because of what we do is we work with typography and we have to be detail oriented. And that's one sure way to get your application just thrown right out. If you wrote your content in Word or Pages as suggested in the content section earlier, make sure that you use grammar check before importing your copy into InDesign. Include hyperlinks to your email address and URL for your portfolio. They're expected to be there. You may make the hyperlinks look different to let people know that they are hyperlinks or choose not to, because most people will mouse over them to see if they are there. There's one caveat though. If you have hyperlinks anywhere else in your text, then you should definitely style them in a way that makes them stand out from the other text. You must kern this document. Remember that you are being judged in a professional capacity by the quality of your typography as well as the content of your document. Headlines and numbers should always be current. Do this step after all the design is done, since any changes to type size can adversely affect all your hard work. Body text does not usually need to be kerned manually, since professionally designed typefaces have extensive kerning tables, and InDesign has some really good ways to control kerning. You should definitely fix anything that looks off, though, regardless of the size of the type. Pro tip: hanging your punctuation will mark you as a typographic pro. Hanging punctuation occurs in the margins outside the alignment of the rest of the text, and InDesign makes it easy for you to do this. Have at least one other person, more is better, proofread your document. You will get tunnel vision working on this on your computer. Print it out and ask anyone who is willing to take a look at it. Insist that each person proposes 3 edits, so they don't return with the cheerful but useless, looks great to me. Not very helpful. Perfection. Yes, sloppy resumes damage your chance to get a job. The irony is that you will not hear the interviewer's feedback on this because you never got the interview. Faced with a stack of nearly identical resumes and a limited amount of time to review them, reviewers will make judgments that are not based on substance. You may not think that it is fair, but it happens all the time. You've been warned. Pro tip: adjust the @ symbol in most typefaces because it's visually larger than the other glyphs, especially lowercase letter forms. Make it a bit smaller and baseline shift it until it looks better and more in proportion with the surrounding type. Spell check one last time before you export your document. If you're working in InDesign, make sure and check the pre-flight panel in your document. It's at the bottom of your window. If you see the red dot, open up the pre-flight panel to see what you need to fix. Name your file in a way that makes sense. You can include the company name and date as an option. I like to do that because it helps keep your document straight, so you know who you were sending it to and when you were sending it. Here's some tips for exporting your document to PDF in InDesign. From the presets, choose high quality print. Make sure that view PDF after exporting is checked. Make sure that hyperlinks is checked. Try to keep your file size under 100K. And always look at your PDF after exporting and test all the hyperlinks. Here are a few last reminders for you to consider. Do print your resume on nice paper and take ample copies to interviews. Don't buy paper that is specially marketed for resumes, like pink marbled paper or gray paper with a linen texture that you'll see at like an Office Max. Do buy high quality paper from a stationery store or visit places like the Paper Source. Don't just upload a PDF of your resume to your portfolio website. Make sure that it is searchable text. Search engines don't read PDFs. You want potential employers to find you. And do include a downloadable PDF link on your website.
Okay, that was excellent information. I'm sure you helped a lot of people with that. So we have a bunch of questions here. One of the first ones that I wanted to highlight was one from Cindy. So Cindy's asking, please share info about how to format a resume to be accepted by an automated computer system, and those that might be different from a pretty PDF designed resume. So I'm going to jump in on this too. The Toolkit series ran this summer, and we had a whole episode of Toolkit that was all about applicant tracking systems. That was recorded. There was a lot of amazing information about how to create and format that resume and how to check it through JobScan and how to identify applicant tracking systems. That is also that information can be found on our YouTube channel. You can watch that. So it was Applicant Tracking Systems for Designers with Robin Mosley Vaughn. That was the name of the episode.
Yeah, that's because that's a whole nother animal. So it's a really good thing to watch. It's a completely different thing.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to go into, what do you mean by make sure it's searchable text? How do we go about posting both a downloadable PDF and searchable text?
So when you're setting up, if you're using a template from, someplace like Squarespace, you can upload an image, right? Or you can type text in. So you want to make sure that you're typing all the information or copying and pasting that text into the document, not just uploading an image of your a PDF of your resume, because the search engines only can find you if that text is within the actual HTML. It doesn't search the PDF, but all you do then for the downloadable PDF is you just put a link to a downloadable PDF so that if people want to, which a lot of people do, they could download it to their desktop and keep it for reference, print it if they're feeling crazy. But yeah, that's really, really important. And I see a lot of my students do that, and it's a mistake because you won't be found for potential jobs.
Thank you. We had another one here that was like, how prominent should the design be for the resume? Like, how crazy should we go with the design? I know you had mentioned Skittles and not too much color, but in terms of like really putting some design on a resume, what are your thoughts there?
I am in the less is more category, because if you've just got a bunch of random crazy stuff, then it's distracting from the content. So I think you can, it's showing typographic control and that you really know what you're doing as a designer to clearly present information is great. Save that other stuff for when you're designing a gig poster for your band, or you're asked by a client to do something extraordinary. I think it's better to be clear and simple, because um, when people are looking at these things, they're not spending much time. It's usually less than 10 seconds. They're going to glance at it, and if you fit certain parameters, then they're going to read the rest of it. That's why that 20-second rule is good. If they've got to sort through a bunch of visuals and colors and everything else, if you've got 100 of those, you're going to get too tired, and you're not going to want to look at that. You're going to want to look at this person has the right qualifications, they have the right education, I'm going to consider them.
Yeah, there was a follow-up here about thoughts on color blocks and resume. Since they bleed off the page, is it best to avoid them entirely?
It's totally fine to use them. Just know that like when we start being able to go physically on interviews, you're going to either have to take them someplace to get printed, like like a print shop that can do that for you, or you're gonna have to print it on 11 by 17 and trim them each down individually to hand out. So color blocks are great, but when you're just using them digitally. But if you're ever going to be in a real situation going on interviews, which we will someday, you want to have that looking the best. So don't avoid them. Just know that it might be a little more work or a little more expense.
We had a question here about, will future talks include how to design an online portfolio and deck-based PDF? So we have done some toolkit sessions that were about building like case studies. That was one actually that I ran. There have been some other things that are about kind of around that portfolio thing, but this is something that people are interested in. We can certainly consider it for the spring. So again, with deck-based PDF ones, so the printed portfolio too, someone is asking about. So yeah, if that's interested, please let us know, and
We'll make it happen.
Okay, for someone with 15 plus years of experience, would you still recommend including a skills section? I saved this because I wanted to make sure we got to this. So should 15 years experience, should they still have skills?
Well, I think it's important especially if you have skills that are outside of the big 3 or 4 in Adobe Creative Cloud. Like, you should know InDesign, Bridge, Illustrator, and Photoshop. But what if you know a whole bunch of other things that are outside those main ones that everybody should know going forward? Then I think that it's really important to include like those more, like those more esoteric, like maybe you know a couple programming languages, maybe you use something that's really specific to an industry that it would be good to include. So yeah, I think it's a way to highlight your skills. So yeah, of course, with 15 years, you're going to know the main parts, but like Adobe, like how many, there's like what, 30 different pieces of software just within that suite. It's crazy.
Any thoughts on showing skill proficiency as graphs or infographics? I find them lacking in too much context to be useful, but they seem to be very popular. This was from Anonymous.
They are very popular and they're usually not very well done. So they usually tend to be visually overwhelming and take away from the more important content, which is your experience, your work experience, and or if you're just out of school, your education level. So if you're going to do them, they need to be visually less important in the hierarchy, and they tend to be, again, I tend to see them, they're really big, they're really visually dominant, and your eyes going like right there instead of to the important part. Just because it's a trend doesn't mean it's a good thing to include.
So my role at Columbia College Chicago is I'm a career advisor for design majors, and this is something that I feel very strongly about because it's popular to add these graphs. And I would just mention that it sometimes a student will, or or somebody might indicate that their skill level with InDesign is 4 out of 5 stars or 90% or something, and immediately it becomes subjective. And you kind of shoot yourself in the foot because my eye is drawn to the negative space immediately of
Right.
where something is lacking. And one time I actually had a student give themselves 2 out of 5 stars for teamwork just because they had not had a lot of collaborative experience. It was strange on the resume. So I would just list the skill.
Right. And you, like I said earlier, you can indicate your level of proficiency. You know, are you an expert? Are you proficient? Are you a beginner? You know, that's enough for people to get a gauge without giving yourself like, I think it's because we're so used to rating everything like with stars and things like that. And again, to Janelle's point, giving yourself 2.5 stars out of 5 for teamwork, that is like, that's not something you want to brag about. So
Right, exactly. We're coming near 7 o'clock, so we're just going to take a couple more questions here. This is one I wanted to get to. I've secured an internship for spring, but it hasn't started yet, and I'm applying for summer internships. Can I include the spring internship on my resume? So an experience that has not yet happened.
no, because the job could fall through.
It's true.
Once you start it, the second you start it, then put it on there. But yeah, especially now because I mean, I know how difficult it is, and I know Janelle helps people find internships. Right now, it's shifting sands, and it just would be safer to just wait.
I am currently laid off, but with the understanding with my employer that when business is back and running, that they will take me back. Do I still count that as a current employer?
Ooh, that's tough. Um, I mean, it really depends too. It's like, is it a furlough where you're still getting some other things, like you're still getting benefits like health insurance and stuff like that? Because sometimes that happens. Or is it you're just not working there anymore? And if you're just not working there anymore, I think you should have that just as a gap. One of the things to keep in mind, there's probably a lot of people in that situation that people are going to see anything that happens in 2020 as an anomaly, right? Like we're going through a lot. So if and our industry's been in flux. So I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're looking for other work or you maybe got some freelance in the interim. And then if it starts back up again, then you could, you know, technically you could have that other experience and then not necessarily show that gap in the employment because it's a little nebulous is what I'm trying to say. You don't want to misrepresent yourself, but if they